September 26, 1983. It is 12 minutes past midnight in a bunker outside Moscow, and every screen in the room is screaming. The computers say 5 American nuclear missiles are inbound. The protocol is clear. Report it, escalate it, launch the response. One man is sitting at the console, and he has 12 minutes to decide if the world ends tonight. His name was Stanislav Petrov, and you've never... To understand what happened that night, you need to understand what the world felt like in 1983. This was not a time of cautious diplomacy. This was the edge of the knife. President Ronald Reagan had just called the Soviet Union an evil empire. The Soviets had just shot down Korean Airlines Flight 007, a civilian passenger jet, killing all 269 people aboard, including a US congressman. Washington was furious. Moscow was paranoid. 3 weeks before this night, NATO began one of the largest military exercises in history, codenamed Able Archer 83. Soviet intelligence believed it might be a cover, a rehearsal for a real first strike. They had their nuclear forces on elevated alert. Fingers were already near triggers. And on September 26th, Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov reported for his shift at Serpukhov 15, a secret Soviet bunker responsible for monitoring American missile launches via satellite. He was not supposed to be there that night. He was covering for a colleague. At 12:14 a.m., the alarm went off. Not a drill alarm, not a test signal, the real one. The Soviet early warning satellite, codenamed OKO, had detected a missile launch from a US Air Force base in Montana, then another, then 3 more. 5 intercontinental ballistic missiles en route. Estimated impact, Soviet soil. Every protocol demanded one thing: report it to Soviet High Command immediately. They would inform General Secretary Yuri Andropov. Andropov would authorize retaliation, and the United States, along with most of the Northern Hemisphere, would cease to exist within the hour. Petrov had 12 minutes. He looked at the screens. He looked at his staff, every one of them watching him, and something didn't feel right. Petrov was an engineer, not a career military officer. He understood the system's limitations better than almost anyone in that room. And right now, the system was telling him something that didn't make sense. First, the satellite data was showing missiles, but the ground radar stations weren't confirming anything. In a real launch, ground radar should be screaming just as loud. It wasn't. Second, if the United States was going to start World War III, why would they fire only 5 missiles? America had over 1,000 ICBMs. 5 missiles would devastate Soviet cities, but leave enough Soviet forces alive to launch a full retaliation. No military strategist would design a first strike that way. It made no sense. But here's the thing about that moment. Petrov's gut said false alarm. His training said, report it. The computer said, launch detected. And every second he waited was a second closer to the point of no return. He picked up the red telephone. He called his commander, and he said, false alarm. He had no proof. He had no confirmation. He had a hunch. And 12 minutes. And the entire planet's future in his hands. Petrov was right. The Soviet early warning satellite had malfunctioned. A rare alignment of sunlight reflecting off high-altitude clouds had been interpreted by the satellite software as missile launch plumes. A 1 in a million atmospheric quirk. A software error in a system the Soviets believed was infallible. 5 phantom missiles that never existed. Within 23 minutes, ground radar confirmed nothing was coming. The skies were clear. The world had not ended. And Stanislav Petrov filed his report. Not as a hero, as a man who had committed a procedural violation. Because when you're supposed to report an alert and you don't, even if you're right, you've broken the rules. The Soviet military did not celebrate Petrov. They investigated him. His commanders were uncomfortable. If Petrov had done the right thing, then the system had failed. And if the system had failed, someone had to answer for building it. Petrov was questioned extensively. He was eventually given a letter of commendation, then transferred to a less sensitive post. He was never formally punished, but he was never promoted either. He retired early, moved to a small town outside Moscow. His wife died. His health deteriorated. For nearly 15 years, no one outside a tight circle of Soviet intelligence knew what had happened in that bunker. The incident was classified until 1998. By then, the Cold War was over, and the man who saved the world was living alone in a one-bedroom apartment, tending to a garden he'd built by hand. Here is what historians have concluded. If Petrov had followed protocol that night, if he had picked up that phone and said confirmed launch, Soviet command would have had no reason not to believe him. Retaliation would have launched within minutes. The United States would have detected Soviet missiles incoming. American forces would have launched their own response. By morning, an estimated 500 million to 1 billion people would have been dead. Not from the blasts alone, but from the nuclear winter that followed. The crop failures, the starvation, the collapse of every system holding civilization together. One man, one shift, one decision. Made not by a general or a president, but by a mid-level officer who wasn't even supposed to be working that night. When journalists finally found him and asked how he felt about saving the world, Petrov said, "I was just doing my job." He died on May 19, 2017, in his apartment in Friazevo. His death went unreported for months. The man who saved the world died quietly, alone, largely forgotten. The Petrov incident was declassified, then quietly archived. It does not appear in most history textbooks. Your government did not want you thinking too hard about how close it came, about how many times it almost happened, about how many Stanislav Petrovs there were, men sitting at consoles staring at alarms, and how many of them we never heard about because they made a different choice. Every file starts somewhere. This was file 001. The case is never really closed.